Welcome to Speedrunner Reviews. In this series I'll be analysing games using the mindset of speedrunning. This video will look at the game from three perspectives. First, the casual experience, which is how most people first play the game. Next we'll discuss the speedrunner experience, including all the interesting tech and how well the game holds up as a speed game. Finally, we'll look at the tool-assisted speedrun, showing what the game looks like when pushed to the theoretical limit. If you already know the game and want to jump straight to the speedrun part, I've left timestamps in the description. Today we're looking at Animaniacs. I'm going to be focusing mainly on the Sega Genesis and Game Boy versions of the game today. There is a Super Nintendo version, but it's quite a different game. Now before we get stuck into it, if you end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing to keep up to date. Subscriptions help out the channel a bunch and I should have more videos coming out like this regularly. So let's get stuck into the game itself. You play as the Animaniacs, which are famous cartoon characters. You're playing as Yakko, Wakko, and Dot. Now Yakko we're playing as now can push blocks like that. Wakko can use his hammer to break various obstacles. For example, if you've got a bomb on the ground, you can use that to, for some reason, set off the bomb fuse and blow it up. And then Dot can blow kisses at enemies, causing them to become confused or whatever. And those are the three basic mechanics that the games are built around. You will tend to spend most of your time playing as Yakko because you tend to be pushing things around quite a lot, but you do swap between them quite a bit. This gameplay dynamic kind of reminds me of Sonic Heroes or something like that. All the levels in the game are sort of based off of famous movie franchises. This first one is like your adventure franchise, kind of like an Indiana Jones kind of thing. And they do lean pretty heavily into the Indiana Jones cliches as well. You've also got the space theme level, which seems to be pretty much based on Star Wars. They do mix it up with this inside area in the space level as well. That background is really weird. I always thought it was like two robots taking a bath or something like that. You've got your Western themed level as well. And you've also got your horror themed level, which seems pretty heavily inspired by Friday the 13th. Can't tell why though. All these levels make pretty heavy use of all three characters' abilities and they never really seem to forget about an ability, which is nice. If anything, you don't use Dot that often, but when you do use Dot it's usually something sort of interesting and worth doing. Your main villain throughout the game is this security guard called Ralph, who always chases you in humorous situations. I always thought this character was heaps funny as a kid. I particularly like this bit where he's chasing you on the train. You have to keep zooming away from him at the last minute. Especially when he literally runs after the train. One cool thing about this game is you can actually choose which of the 4 levels you start on. You get this little selection screen here. There is a 5th level which is the final one, but if you're a kid and not very good at playing this game, you can still see all 4 levels without being very good at the game. That's something I definitely appreciated when I was younger. The game does have some really cool scenery, but unfortunately they resort to auto-scrollers quite a bit, particularly in this first level. You got this one where you're on the boat, and this other one where you're on like a minecart sort of thing. Nothing we can really do to speed these ones up. Once you get past that though, you get into some of the more cool puzzle problem solving bits of the game, which is sort of its strength in my opinion. You also have a boss at the end of this level, and most of them are pretty interesting, like this one where you got to hit the opposite switch to knock her off the platform. Pretty cool design here. Also, if you look at the bottom of the screen here, you'll notice Pinky and the Brain sort of walking around. They'll become pretty relevant later on in the game. So if you haven't tried this game out, I would recommend giving it a go. It's a bit of a mixture of platforming and puzzle problem solving that I find pretty addictive when playing. Just a heads up that the speedrunning section will unavoidably have some spoilers in it. I'll try and keep everything pretty much chronological, so the end of the game should fall towards the end of the speedrunning section. Alrighty, so this is the speedrun leaderboard for Animaniacs. We got easy, normal and hard. There's not too much of a difference there, except that in hard the enemies deal more damage and the final boss takes more hits to beat. You also start with less lives, so in a sense it's harder. But we're going to focus on the easy run of this game because that seems to have the most action on the leaderboards. Also, I've never seen this before, but somehow Lady Gallagher has 6th and 7th at the same time. It's a bit weird. I don't know how that happened. Alright, so the run we're looking at today is Zero Count's 24:49 world record. One thing you'll immediately notice is jumping before using the hammer here with Wacko. The reason for that is if you use the hammer on the ground, then it just takes a long animation. Same with Dot here doing the kiss on the dog, you want to jump before you do that. They take the levels pretty much in order, but given this one's mainly an auto-scroller, there's not too much interesting to talk about in level 1, apart from just really optimizing these character swaps to make sure you're not wasting time. If you know what's coming up in the level, of course, then you can swap to the character in advance without needing to slow down to it. I will stop to point out though how impressive this boss fight is coming up. So this boss you have to hit with rocks, and after a few rock hits he'll come down and try and chase you down the bottom. But this boss is just beaten by hitting him with the rock over and over and over again. This takes a really good knowledge of the boss's iframes, because if you just hit him with the rock as fast as you can, then he won't get hit by it because he's still invincible, and then he'll come down and chase you. But that boss fight is really well done in this run. So next is the space level. You'll see lots of optional areas that you could go to, for example all the stuff upwards. Although Zero Counts doesn't really care about that, they're just going to keep running right and get to the end of the level. You'll also notice jumps being pretty tight and just doing those jumps as early as possible to save time. Cool little skip here, just dipping to the right there rather than going all the way around. There'd also be a whole bunch of visual cues, like this switch for example is opening the door underneath, and Zero Counts has to know exactly how much to open that door before running down and trying to get through it. Of course, if you didn't open it enough, the door would close before you're able to get through. Next we have the western level, and this bit can be pretty dangerous because you can take damage very easily on the barrels and falling glasses and stuff. If you ever try this bit on the hard difficulty, then you're going to have a lot of trouble because you don't have as much health to deal with on that. But Zero Counts gets around the barrels pretty well. You actually want to save your health a lot in this level because there's some pretty strategic damage boosts you can do. For example here, you're supposed to push a bunch of boxes to get across there, but why do that when you can just damage boost straight across? We got this little bit here where he's getting that, whatever that thing is, pushed, because that allows Zero Count to get across here without going through the whole puzzle underneath really. So you zoom through, hit that switch to open the door and go all the way through to the next area. So the boss fight for this area is pretty notorious for killing runs. You have to hit it with this, whatever it is. I can never tell what the things are in this game. But you have to hit him with these circles. And Zero Counts is actually having some pretty bad luck there trying to hit him. Where the circle dispenser goes is random when you hit it, but you can sort of influence it by trying to hit it left and it will usually go left. But getting that fight optimally is one of the real killer points of the run. I'm actually a bit surprised that Zero Counts doesn't do this level first. There must be a reason for it. Although I'd personally do this one first because it's the easiest one to mess up, and then leave that auto-scroller one to a lot later on. Now the train mechanics on this are a little bit weird. You actually want him to jump at the train and fall off when he tries to jump at the train. And then if you do that enough, you're gonna sort of run out his timer and then let him die. When you hit the rocks into the train though, the lid will open and close, and if you hit the rocks in while the train lid is closed, then the rocks bounce off and hit you. So you have to be careful and sort of look at the train when you're doing it. If I remember correctly with the Genesis version, I'm pretty sure you just have to wait a particular amount of time for the boss, and then after that time has passed, he'll do this running animation and then drop the level item. Alright, now we're into the horror level and we see one of our first real glitches of this run. You see this thing here which is supposed to bounce you. If you swap characters at the right time, then it doesn't bounce you up to the left, it just lets you walk straight on through. So that actually saves a whole bunch of time, like moving blocks to hit switches and stuff. We see another appearance of Pinky in the Brain here. This is kind of similar to that boss from Mega Man, I suppose, but you've just got to dodge the dishes until the time runs out and then they blow up their trumpet thing. You've also got this really weird puzzle, so you're actually supposed to do it wrong the first time, and then that lets you sort of break this block. And then after that you're supposed to do it right, and luckily the blocks reset when you do it right. So once you do it right, the other arm of the door opens as well and lets you get properly through. But you need that block to come down there so that you can push the other block. So not many people would think to actually do the puzzle wrong when they play this level, but you sort of have to. Got another little glitch here coming up where he's able to jump on the switch there and then make a jump off. This is incredibly difficult to do, and it's sort of deceptive when you're supposed to jump, but if you make that jump with the correct timing, you can just jump up. You might have seen earlier in the video, I pushed a block onto where the water would come out from, and that sort of lets you do that without doing a glitch. Now, 0 counts is coming into the boss here, and to my understanding, they're going to incorporate the strategy for the boss that was used in the Taz that I made, and that's sort of to lure the boss down to the bottom right here and keep hitting the top left switch. The bottom right is just, a bit quicker all in all because it's less of a jump up there, and you can be consistent with this cycle and just keep hitting the boss over and over like that. The trick is making sure you're standing on the bottom switch to be able to jump up, because the boss will just naturally go opposite to where you are. Alright, next up we got this last 5th level, and it's all about getting an Oscar. So we're going to go and steal all of our sort of movie props that we got back and also grab an Oscar at the same time. We got this big elevator ride up, and one thing that I really like is that Ralph is just sitting right there on the elevator. You can even blow him a kiss and he smiles or whatever. It's kind of nice because it's foreshadowing that Ralph won't be your main enemy anymore. Turns out that Pinky and the Brain are actually the real final boss of this game. One thing that I will point out on the elevator are these laser electricity beam things. You have to blow up the machine that's causing them, and that actually takes quite a while. So if we found a way to get through those without dying, then it would save a bit of time. You've then got this really scary section with these platforms. This is something that I had a lot of trouble with playing this game as a kid, because the cycles are not super obvious. You've also got this chase scene where the whole room is blowing up. Now this is how you do an auto-scroller. You don't have to wait for the explosions to get to you, you can just go at your own pace. But if you go too slow, they will catch you. So games should take a lesson from this. Don't stop you from going fast in an auto-scroller, just make it so that you're penalised if you go too slow. We end the level on sort of this fire area. Now you can slow down and hit the fire hydrants and they will put out the fires near the houses. But if you want to go fast and do it optimally, then you want to not hit those fire hydrants. You may have also noticed that the game lagged quite a bit when 0 counts hit the fire hydrants. So if you can avoid it, you should avoid it. At the end of that fire area, you ride this awesome car and you get all your items back and the Oscar and everything. There we go. And then we're going to get a very, very long unskippable cutscene with Pinky and the Brain for some reason. Yeah, this thing's 2 minutes or something, you can't skip it, it's so stupid. Now the final boss for this game was really well designed considering what the 3 characters can do. Each of the 3 characters has a purpose that you have to do. So the boss is going to throw bombs at you, well, from his pocket. I always forget which is which, I think it's Pinky is in the pocket. And you've got to kiss Pinky to confuse him. Now that stops Pinky from actually lighting the fuse on the bombs. You've then got to use Yakko to move the bombs closer to him, and Wacko to hammer the bombs to blow them up on him. And if you can just keep that cycle going, so Doc kisses, Yakko pushes, Wacko blows up, then you can keep dealing damage to the boss. Now this run has a pretty good boss pattern there. Did very well. Now essentially what you got to do after this is the legs are going to detach from the body, but you got to do essentially the same process again. When I was a kid, this took me ages to figure out how to actually beat this boss, because I could get him confused with the bombs, but I never knew what to do next, so it's not an easy one, but once you know what to do, it's not too bad, especially if you're playing on the easy difficulty. When the boss is beaten, the legs kick the boss in the head, which I love as a final finishing bit of the boss. But if you can sort of get that cycle working well with confusing Pinky, then, the boss goes pretty quickly. I guess there's where we get back all of our resources that we collected. Alright, the Taz we're looking at today is my Taz in 2301, so you can see it's about 2 or 3 minutes faster than the RTA record. So there's nothing major in this Taz that's done differently, it's just those little optimizations. Now the first thing I'll mention about the Taz is it does play on the hard difficulty. That's sort of a general expectation of Taz's, they play on the hardest difficulty possible. Now what RTA does here is just wait up against these bricks for them to blow up, but Taz will do a jump on top of them and then not take any damage. So that's just an example of some little time saves we have in Taz. Taking damage slows you down because you have to wait for that damage animation, but the Taz just jumps straight through. Also just little things like jumping on this dog as soon as it goes down so that we don't bonk on the wall at all, saves a bit of time. Now this bit here is really unfortunate. I did not know that you could hold the jump button to go further with the cannon here. So we don't lose a lot of time there, we do lose a tiny little bit compared to what we could have done in the Taz. That's the only time loss that I know of. Now I would have really liked to have jumped over these thorns, just taking damage to get through, and it was nearly possible. But not quite possible to do the whole lot without riding that thing. And that's partially due to on hard difficulty how we take more and more damage. So where the Taz is going to save a bunch of time is just pulling the box only as much as you need to, and then hammering these two bricks as far away as you possibly can. Then we do this little jump tech where you'll notice I got hooked on the platform there, and that just allows us to start walking sooner than we otherwise could. There's also another very significant time save in the Taz. There it is. Now I'll slow it that way down so we can see what's happening, but basically when I'm landing on this switch here, Wacko sort of lands inside the switch and the collision routine ejects him out to the right. So you'll see a little zip to the right there. That works on pretty much every object in the game, including those boxes that we've been pushing around. So we're going to see lots of little boosts like that across the Taz. Usually saves between 1 and 6 frames whenever you do it. And we can see Taz and RTA looking very similar for this boss here. No real way to speed it up. Apart from knowing where his last hit is and then doing that last hit to the right so that we're moved to the right a little bit quicker. One small thing that I will mention is that jumping loses a little bit of speed each time you do it. So I try and reduce jumping as much as possible. And you'll notice whenever I jump, I usually do the character's attack at the same time as jumping, and that reduces the speed loss a little bit. So it's not like you lose speed for the entire jump length, it's just when you're actually jumping and actually landing, you lose that little bit of speed. So it's important to just try and walk on flat ground where you can. Now the other thing about this section is the Taz only opens that door just as much as it needs to, so you can see it barely squeezes through there. Now after a cannon and a Taz, you can actually retain your speed for a long time. So you'll notice there I do a crazy big jump all the way out to this thing here. And I'm pretty sure that if I had more health, I could have skipped this entire sort of auto-scrolly section using that cannon speed. It's a shame that cannons don't pop up in many other places of the game because you can use them to get a lot of speed and keep it for a long time. If somebody did a hack of this game and put a cannon near the start of the level with very few obstacles, then the Taz could do that level incredibly quickly. Now one thing I will mention about the western scene is there's a bit of RNG to this bit here into how quick the boss finishes. You'll notice I'm not even attempting to hit Ralph there, but he's just on a particular timer for when the horses show up. So I actually had to wait a little bit on the map screen before I selected the level to get the good RNG there for his horses. Now this room is lots of fun in a Taz. I mentioned before that box boosting, and we can boost off barrels as well. You'll notice I jumped into the back side of the barrel and got boosted out there on quite a few of those barrels. You can also do this little skip where you jump on that barrel there to save going around. So this one was lots and lots of fun to do. Taz will similarly do some damage boosts through here, for example this damage boost here to avoid pushing those boxes. You'll also notice the Taz turn around just before doing a damage boost, and that's how we boost to the right rather than to the left. And unfortunately these platforms here are on a very tight global cycle, but luckily I just catch it and don't have to lose any time. That cycle was pretty hard to catch, so I had to really make sure everything was optimal leading up to it to make sure we didn't lose a whole cycle. Now in a Taz, this normally quite frustrating boss becomes pretty easy. You'll notice every one that I shoot almost, I manage to hit the boss there. And there's a bit of managing to it. If you hit him to the left, he's going to zoom all the way left off screen and then take ages to come back. But if you hit him while he's to the right, then he's going to zoom left and almost be ready to hit again. So you sort of want to go right, left on that boss when you're hitting it. But of course, with the randomness of that circle dispenser, it's quite difficult to actually do that in RTA. So this last section with the train is on a timer. Basically, you've just got to run out the timer until it's finished. And then when that timer runs out, he's going to try to jump at you and then come back running on the tracks, and that's when the level finishes. But it is more optimal if you can make sure the train gets kind of close as the time is about to run out, which will make him jump at you anyway. And then when the timer runs out, it should be halfway through the jump, rather than the timer running out and having him start the jump when the timer runs out. So you'll notice I will let him get quite close so that he jumps, I think, here. And the timer is going to run out roughly now. and then you would just come running back on the track and the level's done. So that's a little bit faster than if you just optimally escaping with the train, but optimally escaping with the train isn't that bad of a strategy really, especially in RTA when you don't know what that time is going to be at. Again, we'll do that little glitch with the character swap in the next level just to skip getting bounced back with that thing. And because we're Taz, we'll get this water jump first try, of course. Now this is a Taz fight that RTA adapted before, and you can see it's looking pretty similar to the original fight, only that she's on the left. There isn't much of a difference between having her on the left versus on the right, just as long as she's on the bottom, because going on the top takes about a second longer to jump up. You'll notice here as well that I'm not hitting any of the hydrants in the last area, and that's just because they cause too much lag. You can normally jump around the fire and be fine in a Taz. You'll see the final boss here following a pretty similar strategy to RTA, only we're just really optimally confusing Pinky there to keep throwing bombs. So this does go by a little bit quicker than that RTA fight. Also, we can get the bomb to stick in the air, which is really weird. But it's the same sort of strategy that we've used. I can't remember how that bomb sticking in the air actually works, but it's pretty cool that it happens. And you'll notice as well this fight's actually taking a lot longer than that RTA one did, and the reason for that is because we're playing on hard difficulty. So again, the legs are going to detach and we're going to do a very similar thing, just freezing the bombs here. When he's throwing them very close to the ground, it's pretty easy to just hammer the bombs straight away without having to do any pushing. And that allows you to swap back to Dot and confuse Pinky a lot quicker than what you otherwise could. We've got to be a little bit careful here in terms of health. So we're kind of manipulating those legs not to really mess us up too much. I remember that actually being a really difficult thing to do to get this fight without dying and doing it optimally still. Because you notice the legs there causing us quite a bit of trouble. We also manipulate the legs to be close to the boss there, so that final bit with the legs kicking the boss happens faster than it otherwise would usually. So that's going to be all for this Taz on the Genesis version, and you might notice there's something I have not talked about yet in this video, and that's the Game Boy version of this game. So the Genesis version is pretty glitchless, it relies on very good movement. The Game Boy version is absolutely broken, so we'll look at that next. So the Game Boy version also has a page on speedrun.com, and you might notice it's a bit less populated than the Genesis page, but I have the world record on Game Boy, which is exciting. So I grounded this run out using all the crazy glitches. We will mainly look at the Taz in this section since the speedrun is very similar, but all the glitches I'm about to show you will work in RTA as well as Taz, so not that difficult to actually do. So the first thing you might notice about the Game Boy version is we only have one character on screen at any given time. You can still swap characters with the select button, but then it just swaps to the other character. One thing you might notice when I do this character swap though is that you move up slightly when you swap characters. That is very broken. For example, you can just swap characters next to a box here and get yourself clipped straight into a wall/roof. And if you keep swapping characters, you keep going up. If you get hit by something, you can also jump out of it or swap characters out of it. So when we get hit by this water here, we can just jump straight out of it and get to this area we're not supposed to be in. And we can actually use this to skip the first boss. You might remember this one you have to keep hitting with the boulder, but if we get hit by the falling debris and then swap characters in the air, well, we can just grab the end of level item which is sitting right above us. Normally you can't jump through that steel grating there, but we can clip through it with a character swap. I'll show that again just in full, so we get hit by the debris, and then you swap characters as soon as you get hit. There we go, level done. Overall, the gameplay is very similar to the Genesis version. We even have the same glitches, like this switch jump to avoid pushing the box over to that area. But there are some differences. They did cut out the entire space level from the Game Boy version, and they drastically shortened some other levels. That does make the game quite a bit quicker, like 6 minutes faster. I'd expect it to be a bit faster normally, except for the fact that the characters just move slower in general. So the levels themselves take a bit longer, but there's less of them. Although then again, we have glitches to speed stuff up, so there's so many trade-offs you have to consider comparing these two. Though it is very impressive that they squeezed some complex stuff like this boss fight into a Game Boy game of all things. Now I'll finish off the video by showing one of the most broken parts of this game, and that's this bouncy thing, but it happens if you swap characters while going on this bouncy thing. Now normally you can't actually skip that bouncy thing like the Genesis version, so this is as close as we can get. Once you trigger the bouncy thing, you can just jump straight over it again. But if we've swapped characters, then the character glitches out a whole bunch. And in fact, you're sort of Yakko, but you've got Dot's attack, which is the kiss. And if you blow a kiss while you're in the air as sort of Wacko crossed with Dot, you can actually just walk on the air. So it's a little bit more nuanced than that. There are a few differences with like how the glitch works, but essentially you're just zooming around the screen. So you can do stuff like collect stars where you couldn't normally reach them, or just jump on blocks that you couldn't get to, or skip this door here to get into the next area of the game. So that's one thing, but it gets even more broken depending on which characters you swap to and from. So this character's pretty stable at first, but as soon as we do the attack, we'll get some funky effects happening. You'll notice a lot of the sprites around us corrupting as well. And then as soon as we get to this part, some very bad things are going to happen when we push and pull this block. And there we go, whole game's broken. So unfortunately this glitch here isn't that useful, but it is a lot of fun to play around with. And that's going to be it for this video. Thanks so much for watching.